What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the weekend college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are Mike and Mike Randall, Mike Calabrese. This will be the last episode of its kind this season. We will add our final future to our portfolio in the Futures Roundtable. We will quick recap of the week that was, if you want to rant, key takeaway, wherever you want to go with it. And then, of course, we'll get to some weekend spots that we have circled. And then starting Monday, we will record the first couple Sunday night. We will have a 10-part conference tournament betting preview with us three. Greg Waddell, even got Tanner McGrath to come in, the America East expert, and the guys from the three-man weave will tackle every single conference tournament to get you prepared, whether you're betting them, watching them as a fan, partaking in pools, whatever it may be. But let's get right into it. Let's talk the week that was. Like I mentioned before, anywhere you want to go with it. Randall, I'll start with you. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, brother? Look, I am well aware that Kentucky is flying, and they look great, and they're hitting their stride, and their offense has been tremendous. But Chris Jans, that must have been the worst coaching decision by a really good coach that I've seen in a while. So you're Mississippi State, and you're going to try to match offense for offense with Kentucky. And then in that game, you're running up and down the court, stuck there, running off of misses, running off of makes, sideline break, pull up for three. I'm like, what are they doing? And they're still up 43-35 at the half. And I said, maybe they'll adjust, they'll slow it down. They doubled down on it. And it was a brilliant performance by Kentucky. Reed Shepherd, just absolutely unreal. 32 points, great three-pointers. But folks, Kentucky is a sleeping dog that is sleeping no longer. They are starting to get it together. If you think all you people are going to face them in March Madness in the conference tournament, that the solution is to try to outrun them, you're going to be very disappointed. Guys, Kentucky is probably the biggest enigma we've seen from a big team coming in the tournament in a very long time, because I don't know if they've solved their defensive problems. They did for a couple games against Auburn. They look good, but they're just going up and down the floor. I don't know what Mississippi State was doing. Just a bizarre choice, but you're giving Kentucky momentum, making them extremely dangerous, Stuck.
Yeah, hell of a game from Reed Shepherd. I actually had some Mississippi State money line. So mine is a rant. I'm actually, look, this is the last day of February. I'm looking forward to March because I had a decent February, but it's been a joyless season because I've had 17 shots at the buzzer for covers or non-covers, and I've had one go my way, which was UCSD. Shot to UCSD, who forced overtime with a crazy three last Saturday. But on Tuesday night alone, I had that. I had some Colorado State money line, and then the kicker was I had Wyoming. I mean, give me a break, Wyoming. Wyoming plus 5.5. UNLV goes 90% from the line, 45% from three. But Wyoming, the 50% free throw shooter, of course, makes both to tie it when I just needed them to miss one. And then they miss the jumper to win it. And then in overtime, they miss a layup to clinch the cover. And then, of course, they miss a wide open three. At the end, they lose by 6. There is not many things more painful in betting than a college basketball underdog going to overtime and dying a slow death and losing by the hook. So that was painful. But I feel like, now it might not come this season, it might be next season. These things even out over time. But I'm overdue for some buzzer beaters. So I'm hoping to have an exciting March. And I cannot wait for March. And my other rant is kind of just I'm throwing middle fingers up at Texas A&M. What a sad couple weeks for them. And that offense, which was already in the dumps. It's gone further into the dumps. They're done. Unless they win the SEC tournament and magically find ways to make shots, they're out of it. On the positive side, and I'll get to our futures portfolio in just a second, St. John's in my opinion, 100% in. They're peaking at the right time. Huge win over Butler and a blowout win too, which helps their net rankings to follow up that Creighton. All they got to do, beat Georgetown, beat DePaul, close out the year, and I think they're in, which is good for our futures portfolio because I think Johns could be a dangerous team once they get in. Calabrese, how about you? Where do you want to go from the week that was?
Well, just to cap that St. John's thought, I was at Nova Georgetown earlier this week. Man, is Georgetown down. Like I still can't believe sometimes they'll flash like the March Madness moments or the Big East tournament moments. Like this was such a proud program, and the fact that it's fallen so far in a sport where you should be able to, with the transfer portal, get two quality starters in and turn your program around in 1 year. No more of this like 4 to 5 year rebuild situations. So it's just really sad to see, to be honest, as a Big East basketball fan.
Yeah, they should. They have like like somewhat decent talent. They should be better than they are. They're not like DePaul. Like DePaul is void of talent if you just look at their roster. But I agree. College basketball is so much better when Georgetown is good.
And it's so rare because the commitment by the school, the administration, and it's the only sport that their fans care about. So it just doesn't make sense to me that it hasn't clicked. I know that this is just year one of Cooley, and we got to give him some time, but I'm a little bit surprised, as you alluded to, the overall roster talent should have been good enough to play, what, 500 ball in the Big East, something like that. Two other quick.
I will not take that the Georgetown football slander.
Okay. Their baseball team is fun. My cousin actually pitched for them back in the day. Yeah, so essentially there's two teams that I am interested to talk about with you guys and just kind of put this out there. Is Kansas officially dead, or are we happy to write them off as a team that can go to the Final Four even? Because losing to BYU, Stuck, you tweeted about it. That was the first blown lead for Kansas at home in 100 games, something like that. Like to lose a game like that just seemed unthinkable. And I think the mystique and luster is just totally off of them at the wrong time. Headed into the Big 12 tournament, headed into March Madness, you would think that they want to be playing their best basketball. I understand they've had injury issues with McCullough. Maybe that provides an opportunity to buy low on them, at least against the spread moving forward, but I just don't see them magically putting it all together in March. And then the other team is, I don't know, because I look at the metrics and then I watch the games, what I truly think about Tennessee. Because Dalton Connect playing the way that he's playing, you have that feeling like he can just go and play hero ball and take them all the way to the Final Four or maybe a national title. But then also their underlying defensive metrics and giving up as many points as they have in certain games this year, I worry maybe they're more like a candidate to get shocked in the first weekend. So I'll pitch that to you guys real quick. What are your thoughts on Tennessee? Are you believing what you're seeing on the high end, or do you think that there's enough deficiencies plus Rick Barnes in March kind of holding you back from being a ball backer?
Well, I think we're going to save that, because Randall, you're going to have something in the futures portfolio?
Fighting as hard as I can for it. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I will say with Kansas, like, look, Texas, who had a really impressive win at Texas Tech. Warren Washington matters a lot for Texas Tech. Kevin McCullough matters a lot for Kansas. It was just one game, and people were saying, they don't need McCullough. McCullough's the best perimeter defender. He is significantly better than Timberlake. He's a great shooter. He brings so much to both ends of the floor, and it's not a deep Kansas team. And you get a lot more Timberlake, you get a lot more Marco Jackson, and the team is nowhere close to the caliber that they were with McCullough. So his status, I don't think we've gotten any more clarity, but his status himself, he was just kind of like a little cryptic. We don't know when we're going to get him back. He's a guy that's going to be a 3-and-D guy in the NBA. So that he's critical to Kansas. And Kansas has 6 losses in the Big 12. Bill Self's tenure never has had 7 losses, which could happen this weekend against Baylor. So before we get to futures portfolio, and we'll circle back on Tennessee for you, Calabrese, I got a quick trivia question for you guys. All right, can you name the 3 power conference teams. So current power conference teams that have never made a Sweet 16.
Ooh, Sweet 16. Okay. BYU make one?
They did.
Yeah, with Danny Ainge, is that right? Well, not Danny Ainge.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think BYU did it in 2010, 2011, and they did it a bunch way back in the day.
All right, I'm gonna throw in Rutgers.
Rutgers is incorrect.
Hmm.
Rutgers made a Final Four way back in the day. But they have not made a Sweet 16 since.
Stuck Vanderbilt?
Vanderbilt is incorrect.
Oh, jeez.
So the interesting thing, the BYU team that made the Sweet 16 in 2011 was the Fredette team.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really good. They lost to Florida in overtime in the Sweet 16. And that team, if you remember, had Brandon Davies, their big man, but he got dismissed from the team
For the honor code violation? Yeah.
for the on March 1st. And he was one of their, besides for that, one of their better players. I'll give you a hint. Not Pac-12, not ACC. And not SEC.
What'd you say? Not SEC, not
ACC, not
Pac-12.
Pac-12.
So we got Big 12, Big
One of these teams
Big
is a
East.
power conference team.
Old
Never
Miss?
won.
Oh, they made
Not SEC.
Yeah,
Never won a tournament. One of
Marshall
these teams has never won a tournament game.
UCF made a couple years ago, right?
Nope. UCF is correct.
What was that? Oh, that game was round of 32. That game was round of
Against
32
Duke, yeah.
Was it?
against Duke, but that was round of 32 game.
Actually, no, they made the Sweet 16. Who was the third? They did it way back.
Hold on, Nebraska? No Sweet 16 for Nebraska?
Correct.
Okay.
Nebraska's never won
Off the schneid.
a tournament game. I guess this is since the field expanded, I guess, because I just looked up UCF. Nebraska, Northwestern, and UCF. UCF apparently made a.
Oh, yeah. Northwestern got knocked out in the round of 32 also. That's right. They had that really good game. Yep.
Northwestern apparently made one Sweet 16 in like 1980. All right. Anyway, let's move on to our futures portfolio. Our last futures ad, profitable last year, hoping to be profitable again this year. Let's recap the first 8 before we add the 9th and final future to our portfolio. Houston to win the Big 12, plus 145. I think we got it. That looks great. That should be a winner. Houston to win the national title, plus 950. Got a good price there. I think it's down to plus 750 everywhere now. Kentucky national title, right around the price you can still find now. And then a bunch of Final Four bets. South Carolina, Wisconsin, Clemson, St. John's, all longer shots. And then fart noise, Texas A&M. That's my bad on that one. Hopefully Johns gets there and makes up for it. Or Clemson. Or any of them. And then we'll be sitting pretty. But we're going to add one more. Randall was itching to get his off of his chest. So I'm going to let him go first. What do you got?
I'm going to follow your lead, Stuck, which has never led me wrong. You were great last week in saying we need some hardcore teams. We need teams that have a chance to go far. We've messed around with some Final Four, messed around with some conferences, and we were solid with Houston, which was a great call. I am begging you guys to take Tennessee plus 1,300 to win the national title. I really believe this team has it this year. Everything is falling into place for them. 16th strength of schedule, 16th non-conference strength of schedule, 22 wins, competing in the Southeast Conference. You want to say best, second best, whatever you want to say, that they are right there. They're top 20 in adjusted offense efficiency, top 3 in adjusted defense efficiency. Mike, I recognize their defense is not where it normally is. That's fair, but they still lock down inside the arc and finally have the late game killer in Dalton Connect. He can be exposed defensively. That's fair, but they can go to him, which is something they've never had. Rick Barnes, 5 straight tournaments, Sweet 16 last year. I was at Madison Square Garden, 10-point lead over Florida Atlantic. This team plays well. They have chemistry. They have balance. They can run. They've gotten up and down the floor. They've beaten Kentucky in Kentucky. This is the team we need to choose. We need a piece of the Tennessee Volunteers. And guys, final part, if you want to get into it, yes, they were in the week 6 AP poll. They were ranked in the top 12. They were number 12. Last 19 national champions have come from that. Guys, just like we got a piece of Houston, I think we need a piece of Tennessee. It's only plus 1,300. I wish it was a little higher, but I still think that's really good value on a team that really can only be exposed if someone can bang the boards against them, which is a very unique style. I think they have a run in them. I am begging you for the Tennessee Volunteers national title future.
Calabrese.
I am going to stick in the SEC, but I have a different suggestion. This team 14-1 to make the Final Four may present the Florida Gators. All right, they are 9-2 straight up in their last 11. You know, with South Carolina, Alabama at home. They got the SEC. These are games coming up. South Carolina, Alabama at home, the SEC tournament. So they could play their way onto the 6th line. I think that's a critical differential between the kind of teams you're going to face in the second round, the round of 32, as opposed to having to go up against a 2 seed. They're an elite rebounding team, particularly in the offensive glass. They grab 14 per game, which is second nationally. They're 30th in tempo, 15th in offensive efficiency. And then when you drill into who they are lately, since January 1st, 21st nationally, according to Torvik, and since February 1st, their defense has cracked the top 50. They're 44th in Torvik's metric, so they're starting to play better on that side. I trust their collection of guards as a whole. Clayton Jr., Pullen, Richard. The big question for me is, can they get anything from Riley Kugel off the bench? Is he completely broken? Because the end of last year, he seemed like he was a player that was ascending. He was starting to come on strong. He started this year playing very well on the offensive end. Just 49 minutes in the last 4 games and only 10 total points coming off the bench. He's looked completely lost. I think he could be a difference maker off the bench. I'm hoping that he can get a little bit of confidence in the end of the regular season and the SEC tournament to give them anything in March. And then when you look at their resume, neutral court wins against Pitt, against Richmond. They played Baylor really well and scored in the 90s. They got a win at Rupp and an overtime loss on the road at Alabama, which I view basically as like a quality performance. So this is a year where there's very few teams that have demonstrated multiple times over that they can play at a high level and beat quality teams on a neutral floor or away from home. Florida is not quite a team that has that huge, marquee win on the road, but I think overall their resume indicates to me that they can put it together. So I like Golden here, finally getting his best Florida team together. I think he played the transfer portal perfectly. I really like this front court. 14-1, I think, is a pretty decent value.
Yeah, great coach. A team that kind of fits in our mold of like not 3-point reliant, but they are capable from the outside. When if it would be as you said, it'd be a big bonus if Kugel gets going, but if Poland obviously can, and if Clayton gets hot, they're pretty unstoppable because they can really dominate the offensive glass. Worry a little bit about the free throw shooting. They're bigs at the line, or
not good.
They do scare me. Florida is definitely going to be a team to be reckoned with come tournament time. All right, I'm going to throw out, you could find 45-1 out there. Baylor to win the national title. Here's my case. They do have defensive issues, but you're seeing the zone back, And we've seen Drew make runs with way less talented teams to the Elite Eight multiple times on the back of that zone, right? Unique zone. You don't see it often. You're out of conference, tougher to prepare for. But mainly, this Baylor team, I'm buying the upside. Out of all the teams in the country that you look at, I mean, how many have 2 freshmen that are going to be draft picks who are uber talented, and they're going to get Langston Love back, who's just, so they're kind of building more depth right now with him out, but he's one of the best 6th men in the entire country. But I think with those 2 freshmen, they can, I feel like they're only going to continue to get better. The ceiling is higher than, I think, like if you took the bands of most teams, like I don't think we've seen the ceiling. The ceiling, like compared to where they are now, might be the highest for Baylor. So I think there's a lot of upside there. The zone, I think, can help fix some of their defensive issues and could cause problems for teams on a quick turnaround come tournament time. So I'm proposing Baylor 45-1 to win the national title. All right, it's time to vote. We have, hold up, 1 for the Tennessee Volunteers to win the national title, 2 for Florida to make the Final Four, and 3 for Baylor to win the national title. 3, 2, 1. Randall wins.
Rocky Top.
I mean,
I like them all.
We talked trivia earlier. The last time Rick Barnes won a game in the
I knew Calvary was going to
weekends,
bring this up.
George W. Bush was the president of the United States. So it has been a minute since he's done any damage in the second weekends. I'm not being facetious. Like, I was trying to play out both sides at the beginning of this episode because there is so much to love. And like, all you have to do is watch Connects play. And you're like, if he scores 28 per game in the tournament, they're going to be able to beat just about everybody that they play. So there's certainly a path to victory. There's no, mental gymnastics that you have to go through. And I do think defensively, it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. They've allowed themselves to play faster and up tempo in some games. I think they can protect themselves by playing a little bit slower. But in a year that a lot of the top teams have a glaring weakness, I don't think it's ridiculous, particularly at this price, to go ahead and grab the ball. So I don't hate it at all.
What I'd say, Mike, is I wish we could find out how Ziegler plays in the tournament because I really think he's the bellwether of this team. When he's hot, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, they almost never lose. He is the option. He's the engine. They're going to connect. Sure, I'll get a couple bigs on the post hooks, but like that's it. I think they have enough. I really do. And maybe I'm falling in love with the narrative too. That I know Barnes is terrible, but he does have sustained success. All of a sudden, we're selling short sustained success. I get it. He got there with TJ Ford. Can he get there with Dalton Connect? That's the question.
Yeah, and I also will say, I really think, like right now, and look, that narrative used to exist about so many coaches, right? It exists about Bill Self,
Jay Wright,
Tony Bennett. So, it's a tournament where random shit happens, and a lot of coaches go a long time without winning. I will say, if you look at Tennessee and Arizona right now, like this for the 1 seed. So there's a really good chance that Tennessee gets up to the 1 seed. It'll probably come down to like, do either of them suffer another loss in the regular season, or does only one of them win their conference tournament? And then in which case they would get the 1. But I would probably say that Tennessee 50-50 shot to get a 1 seed with Arizona, because it looks like Houston, UConn, and Purdue are pretty locked. So that would only help as well. All right, good stuff. Our final future, Tennessee Volunteers. We got Tennessee and Kentucky. Tennessee fans are not going to be happy with having Kentucky that are following along, and vice versa. And then we got good old reliable Houston. All right, good stuff. Let's get to the weekend, and we'll talk about some spots that we had circled. Randall, as the winner of the final futures roundtable, I'll let you start. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll start on Saturday here. I'll piggyback off what you said about Baylor. They're playing Kansas at home. I don't think they're messing around. That you end up having a Baylor team now that you've seen. They've gone up and down, but they have the potential. They're playing Kansas here. It looks like they have Kansas, then they have Texas, then they have Texas Tech remaining. They did lose a close game at Kansas, 64-61. I project this line. Ken Palm has it at 5, at probably about 6 or 7. I don't. Kansas on the road. Furphy has been a different player on the road than he's been at home. They're coming off the bid win over TCU. They lost the game at home to Houston. They're certainly battling for seeding here. Kansas without McCullough is just a different team. That was a bad loss to BYU. BYU needed it badly. But you saw that they've been fantastic at home, even without McCullough, but they're starting to come back to earth. The zone is causing problems. Losing one of your best 3-point shooters, really playing at a first-team All-American level, is going to hurt them. I think it's a Baylor comfortable win on Saturday, March 2nd against the Jayhawks.
Yeah, Kansas doesn't shoot threes. Like, I feel like they're a zone candidate.
Bad matchup.
And yeah, especially without McCullough. And from reports I read today, there's a decent chance Baylor gets Langston Love back on Saturday. He's ramping up at practice. Be a huge addition off the bench, a guy who can fill up a box score, as well as anyone coming off the bench. Calabrese, what do you got?
One more trip to the Ivy League. Friday night, Cornell laying 3.5 at Penn. There's a 3-way tie atop the Ivy at 9-2 between Cornell, Princeton, and Yale. Cornell split with Yale and can complete the 2-game sweep on Saturday over Princeton, but it's all for naught if they trip up against Penn on the road. This is just a really good matchup for them. They hammered Penn by 17 in Ithaca, and critically, Penn has nothing left to play for. They're in the middle of a nosedive. They've lost 9 of 10 straight up, 7 of those losses by 7 points or more. 3 straight home losses against the spread to Harvard by 9, Yale by 14, Brown by 13. And this Penn team is so bad defensively. This is actually going to be, according to my spreadsheet, my biggest bet in terms of a disparity this year between shooting defense and shot making. Opponents make nearly 54% of their attempts against the Quakers. That's 314th in the country. Cornell, the best shooting team inside the arc at 62%. That's number 1 in the USA. Penn's not going to force any turnovers, so they got no opportunity really to slow down this Cornell attack in this one. I would play this up to 5. I think this is only priced in this kind of range because it's a look-ahead moment with Princeton on deck, but I still see this as a game that they need, and I think they're going to win comfortably.
Yeah, Ivy, the most interesting part of the race, I believe, is just for the 4th spot, and that's going to come down between, Harvard and Brown, who play each other tomorrow night?
Mm-hmm.
They're both at 5 and 6. So massive game. I actually like Brown. I haven't seen a line, but hoping it's around a pick. Probably won't be. It'll probably be -2. I'm gonna go. It's time to buy our Badgers. Let's buy our Badgers. They're 2 and 6 in February. They're hosting Illinois here. Sounds bad, but 5 of those 6 losses came by 2 possessions or less, or in overtime. They lost 2 overtime games. 5 of the 8 games they played were on the road. Now they're back home. They've lost twice at home this year to Tennessee and Purdue, 2 potential 1 seeds. That's it. And during that 8-game stretch, a lot of it's just 3-point variance. They shoot 28% from 3. That's 326th in the country. Before that, over their first 20 games, they shot over 36%, which was 70th in the country. Shots are going to start falling. Most importantly, though, the Illinois defense is broken.
It's awful stuff.
They can't defend anybody.
Jumbo shrimp.
Month of February, 249th in adjusted defensive efficiency per Torvik. They can't defend at the rim. Can't defend at the post. That's trouble against Wisconsin. 95th percentile in per post-up rate per synergy. Illinois allowing post-up frequency to 97th percentile with below average efficiency. Wisconsin can keep Illinois off the offensive glass, and they can keep them out of transition, which is where Illinois really thrives. So I think that this is a great opportunity to buy Wisconsin at home. They haven't, also their seniors, they haven't beat Illinois ever. They've lost 6 straight. I think they'll be up for this game. And Illinois, they're not haven't necessarily been road warriors this year. We saw them blow the lead to Penn State. Their road wins have come against Rutgers, Michigan, Ohio State, and Maryland. So yeah, two offenses that want to get to the rim. I trust the Wisconsin defense much more than this Illinois reeling defense. And yeah, for what it's worth, Illinois, Purdue at home on deck. So not the best situational spot as well. Randall, what else you got?
South Carolina's done with their little stumble there against Auburn and LSU. They are back. Michi Johnson pumping in 22 against Texas A&M. When they are home, they are hard to score on. Here comes Florida. You mentioned it with the free throw stuck. I don't like backing teams that struggle from the free throw line to cover on the road. This line should be low enough, and Florida is hot enough that people are buying into them, but their defense is not nearly going to be inside the arc enough to prevent this South Carolina team. And South Carolina has proven time and time again that at home they will lock you down. They step out, they hit timely threes. Like this South Carolina team a lot. They're playing well. Very big win. Texas A&M, who absolutely need it. I think they've righted the ship. You'll get a low line here. Maybe South Carolina by 1 or 2. I think they win this game outright. Like Florida, I just think there's a difference here in the toughness and the defensive mindset. Lamont Paris, every team goes through a stumble. They've righted the ship. They're ready to go. I don't think Florida pulls the upset on the road, so the line will be low enough. I'll take the Gamecocks.
What do you got, Cowboys?
My 2 Saturday plays are like dogs catching points. Let's go South Florida plus 3.5 at Charlotte. The Bulls are 19-1 straight up in their last 20, but they got to keep winning if they have any at-large hopes that they want to keep alive. Charlotte nearly upset the Bulls down in Tampa, but when you look at that game, I still view it as a positive because the Bulls found a way to win during an off shooting night. They're +4 in the offensive rebounding margin, +6 in the turnover margin. This is a team that just finds ways to win, grinds out W's. They've been consistent because they defend so well. They're 37th in opponent shooting efficiency, and they play up. This is my new favorite stat from Evan Maya on his website. It's called Opponent Adjust Metric, and it basically measures if a team plays better or worse when punching up or punching down. USF is the 5th team nationally when it comes to their play improving against good teams. So Charlotte's a good one. They have their attention by almost upsetting them at home. I think they're going to play well on the road, and I'll take the 3.5.
I'm going to throw out Iowa against Northwestern. Iowa's playing better of late, and I think they just match up really well with Northwestern. More importantly, Northwestern, they already lost Tyberry, and they might be without Langford again. And as a result, they had to start a walk-on. Well, they still won it. Maryland, why? Because Maryland cannot throw the ball into an ocean. They went 2 of 22 from 3. Most of them were wide open. Northwestern's defense is bad. The only thing they do, they'll double the post. They do play big men very well, and they cause a lot of turnovers. Well, Iowa top 10 in the country in turnover rate. They do not give the ball away, and Northwestern's going to foul you a ton. Bottom 50 in the country. Iowa can take advantage there. Top 20 in the country from the line. And Northwestern's in the tourney. And by the way, all these injuries, everyone is playing like 40 minutes a night. I worry about their legs. And Iowa, I think that they have a chance to get in. They could be the team that everyone says, how did they get in? They're not on anyone's radar. They're not in like bracket matrix. But if you look at now they have to win this game. And they still have more work to do. But they're sneakily playing better of late. And Northwestern also loves to work in the mid-range. Iowa's defense 9th nationally in mid-range field goal percentage allowed. And Northwestern, they're just not going to keep shooting at this rate. They're shooting 45% from 3 over the past 10 games. That's number 1 in the country. That won't last. I like Iowa here. Matchup, and Northwestern's just not healthy. And they've gotten away with it because no one has made shots or teams have gotten in foul trouble. But I like Iowa here. You got anything else, Randall?
Last one, maybe because I sat and watched them last week. Guys, St. Bonaventure, of course, we know is so well coached by Mark Schmidt. He had a plan. He was going to take his big man, Chad Venning, and he was going to go at Josh Cohen all game long. It was obvious. He had to touch the ball. I was sitting right behind the bench. Make sure Chad gets the touch. Make sure Chad gets a touch. That got Josh Cohen of UMass in foul trouble, and that throws them off. St. Bonaventure is a terrible matchup for the Minutemen. If they face them in the A-10 tournament, it's good night. They're not moving on. But they're playing now on the road UMass, a Davidson team that is not going to bring that level and that structure against them. They've done a pretty decent job overall. They just need to make some threes. Diggins was invisible for them. Curry is a really good freshman, guys, for UMass. He's a legit scorer for them. They're going to hit a couple threes. They rebounded nicely against George Washington. That was an easy win. I like the way this UMass team is with Frank Martin. Now they're moving to the MAC. The basketball people may not be happy about that, but we are, because I think there's some good talent in the MAC. But I like UMass on the road at Davidson on Saturday. Don't believe in Davidson. They can be pushed around. Cohen doesn't get in foul trouble, guys. They beat St. Bonaventure. They win that game. They are 10-6 in the A10. But that's the key. Matt Cross had an off game. They couldn't make any shots at home. St. Bonaventure, just a different matchup than Davidson. I think they go on the road. Their physicality showed through at Richmond. Their physicality showed through at Dayton, where they hung around. I think they get the job done here with Frank Martin on the road at Davidson. I will take them as a slight underdog against Davidson on Saturday.
Davidson can't shoot, so their offense just doesn't work. They usually can shoot, and those McKillop offenses are a well-oiled machine, but nothing works if they can't shoot it, and they can't shoot it this year. I give them credit for their defense. The defense is actually one of their better defensive teams they've had in a while, but they just can't shoot. Simple as that. Randall, what are your thoughts or others' thoughts on the move from a UMass perspective? Do you have any?
Yeah, Stuck, only because I went through this at Boston College. And here's my thing. We were all excited when I was at BC and they announced they were going to the ACC. The problem is the school has to adjust. So Boston College has never lowered their admission standards when they went to the ACC, which is why, even though they went right away, they had Matt Ryan, they had a little bit of a bump, a hangover from being in the Big East. They've never succeeded really since, because they're not attracting the players. They're not expanding their recruiting base and maybe just giving reasonable admission standards. I still remember when Jim O'Brien was at Boston College, they lost 3 players because the admissions department wouldn't let them in. Mike Bradley, who went to Kentucky, Jonathan DePino, who went to Harvard, and Elton Tyler, who went to Miami. And after that, O'Brien pretty much was done, and that was it. So my comment will be, if UMass is able to adjust going to the MAC, we know it's because of football. I get that. But they can become a dominant program there in the MAC and really improve themselves. The problem is the fans are frustrated right now because the A10, Chaz Williams, went on Twitter and said he probably would not have come to UMass if they were in the MAC, because he was already, I think, in the CAA. He was looking for a bigger exposure. So I think if they have the right mindset, they could become a dominant program in that league. But it's because of football. The question is, will the administration and the program do what they have to do to become now a big fish in a small pond instead of being in the ACC where they had history?
Yeah, I still don't understand what. I don't pretend to be an expert on this, of how all this works, but like UMass, which makes sense, they petitioned for the men's and women's lacrosse to stay in the A10. So I can't imagine the MAC has great lacrosse teams. But why can't the football team just go and the basketball team stay? I guess that's like part of the MAC is requiring that.
Yeah, I think the MAC wants both.
Right.
Yeah,
got you. Cabrice, anything else from you?
Yeah, just I think the hardest thing for UMass and their fans is to try to build any kind of rivalries with their new conference partners. And beyond football, at least football, there is a path, there's a brand, there's Maction, you have national notoriety. In basketball, I agree with the assessment of some of these players. You're taking a step down because, ironically, they've been able to figure it out in football, but not in basketball. Why aren't there, standalone games for Maction on the hardwood on Friday? Like, no one's playing basketball on Friday anymore. Get back to that. Give yourself an opportunity to be on some of these major networks and build things up. And then the last piece of it for me, when you were talking about Boston College, a big part of it is when you move conferences geographically. This won't impact UMass because they're already so low in recruiting anyway. But when BC left, you lose those regional partners and an opportunity to be able to say to families like, all right, we're going to play at Rutgers and we're going to play at Syracuse and we're going to be in these states. And that gives you a better chance of creating pipelines there. When the majority of your conference partners are 500, 600 miles away, and you don't hire somebody who has a pipeline into South Florida or some kind of connections or hires a recruiting coordinator, then you're already behind the 8 ball. And I think you're really seeing that, and why it's, put this artificial cap on where BC football can be, because they have not gone out and tried to game the system a little bit. And by not having those regional rivalries, they don't get the Jersey kids in the same way they used to, or when New York has a top 300 player, like they're just not even in the conversation. So I think that's long-term what hurt the Eagles.
Yeah, the move of Bill
Yeah.
O'Brien is, I'm sorry, Stuck. The move of Bill O'Brien is a good one because now we have ourselves that coach that's been in the NFL. So players feel like they can go there and be recruited up. The problem with Boston College is they were getting small time coaches without connections, moving to the ACC, who in the warm weather wants to go to BC. Plus you had the admission standards again. And I'm not saying lower, but you have to be reasonable. You have to compete. That's what it is. And listen, I went down to the ACC championship game at Jacksonville Stuck years ago. I'm going back 15 years. I mean, it was like 9/10 Virginia Tech fans. It was, so that's another issue as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see it's obviously a step down for basketball, but it actually might work out. Now, this is the double-edged sword. Like they might have an easier path now to the NCAA tournament, but now playing in the MAC, can they still draw the same caliber of players?
Yeah.
But like, does more success end up leading to higher caliber? So that'll be really interesting to watch. And the football team just has to be better. They're kind of heading in the right direction. They were so bad before. You can't develop any rivalries when you suck. Like you got to be good, and then like you'll have wars with teams, and then they'll have meaningful games. If everyone just walks all over you, you're obviously not going to develop any new rivalries. Anyway, I digress. Do you have anything else for this weekend, Cowboys?
Yeah, I got one more. I'm going to go with UMass Lowell catching probably 7 at Vermont up in Burlington. The Riverhawks, when they played the top teams from the America East, they played well. They beat Bryant. They took Vermont to overtime in their first meeting. They actually beat Bryant by 9 on the road. And a big part of that's the continuity with their lineup and their rotation. Their starters have started every game together this season. They all average over 10 points per game. As a team, they defend the three-point line really well, better than just about anybody in the America East. They rebound well, and they get to the line a whole lot. I like the being able to get to the line element for taking your show on the road, particularly when you're trying to hang around with a team that's on the cusp of 2-3 possessions in terms of being a favorite. So I just don't see UVM running them off the floor in this game, so I'll take the Riverhawks +7.
I'm curious, Mike, what's your read tonight on Bryant at UMass Lowell? Look ahead?
I think it could be a look ahead moment. I think in general too.
I don't know, they both need it though
Right.
You want to get as high a seed as possible, right? And because you host games for as long as possible. But yeah, I'm sure they want that Vermont game too. And they should have beat Vermont. That was one of the buzzer beaters that got stolen from me. They had a layup and they called a timeout. And then called a timeout with 1 second left. They had a layup and then it was awful. And then they just inbounded it and did nothing. And then went to overtime and they lost. Typical dog.
I swear I wasn't trying to trigger you there. It was just coincidental that was one of your many bad beats on the final possession.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have, by the way, I'll have my write-up for Saturday's card out on actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. I'll also include I'm going to wait for today's results, tomorrow's, some of the conference tournaments that are ending this weekend. I'll include a bunch of just scenarios. And for example, the Patriot League. Colgate has everything locked up. They're going to Lehigh. Colgate has nothing to play for.
Lehigh almost beat them the last time they met. The only thing I'll push back on, before you get into the weeds on that game, is that Colgate was in the exact same situation last year, and they just kept blasting everybody down the stretch. Like they locked it up with 3 or 4 games to go. But I do think that's a situational element to understand once these auto bid teams are in. They have 0 at-large hope, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll get into the Patriot League Sunday night because Lehigh almost beat them without arguably their best player.
Yeah,
who's back, and they are significantly better now with Higgins. Charleston already has the 1 seed locked up. Sanford, High Point, but Vermont is already clinched. But I'll note some of those. The last one I'll give out. I think I might be on Gonzaga. St. Mary's shooting. I mean, Gonzaga's playing a lot better. They need this game much more than St. Mary's, but more importantly, St. Mary's isn't healthy. I think the loss of Jefferson matters. Their other big has been out, one of their reserve bigs, and they're shooting 45% from 3 in the month of February. That's not sustainable. Gonzaga's playing much better. I don't think St. Mary's is going undefeated. I think Gonzaga gets that win. And I'll look for an inflated number with San Jose State against UNLV. UNLV playing really well. They're 6-1 in February. They're like in the running somehow for the Mountain West regular season title, but no one can make a shot against them. Teams are shooting 23% from three with a high volume. They give up a bunch of threes. San Jose State, there's one thing they can do. They have some shooters. They'll chuck it up. And, you know, UNLV coming off that overtime win in altitude in Wyoming. And guess what? They have San Diego State and Nevada on deck. So this is just like a sleepy home spot where they'll probably go through the motions. So I'll hopefully get a decent number on San Jose State. But that'll do it for us. We now will go prepare for all of our conference tournament previews. The first 2 episodes will be out on Monday. Calabrese, Greg, and I will be doing OVC, ASUN, and Patriot. And then Randall and I will handle Horizon, which is a fascinating conference from contrasting styles and matchup perspective. The Fun Belt and the good old NEC. So check those out on Monday, and then we'll continue rolling out episodes over the next week and a half. 10 in total, covering all the conference tournaments. Thanks to Mike and Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. By the time you're listening to this, it will be March. March is here. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Good luck on all of your wagers this weekend and throughout the month. We'll be back Saturday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, BBOC Live. And then we'll be back with all those conference tournament previews episodes next week, starting Monday. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Thanks for listening again. We'll catch y'all later. Cheers.